There we go. All right. Yeah, good morning. Thanks for joining. And pretty excited to get working on this guy. We've been letting it dry for a week. And so now I feel like I could come in and scrub some colors on there, paint some colors on there. Always the first question is, what colors did I lay out? They're a little bit different than my normal. I mean, I always have two yellows, two reds, two blues for the most part. So I've got a titanium white. I've got a cadmium lemon yellow. I've got Indian yellow, nice transparent warm yellow. It was kind of the undercolor for a lot of this. Today I've got a Naphthol Scarlet as my red that leans towards orange. And I do not have quinacridone, which is my typical purpley red. Today I have alizarin permanent, simply because I am out of quinacridone, which I don't think has ever happened in the last like 10 years. But I've got a lot of alizarin because I don't use it very often, but I thought it would be great for this. I want this to be very earthy and organic colors. I've got an ultramarine blue up there today and manganese blue. So that'll be my blue that leans towards green, my blue that leans towards purple, my red that leans towards purple, my red that leans towards orange, my yellow that leans towards orange, and my yellow that leans all the way back to green. As I like to do, I put my guest colors, so colors that aren't typically on my palette, over here on the left side. I've got a brown pink, simply because I had it on my palette earlier from a demonstration I did on Monday for the, Art School Live with Eric Rhodes. Over here we've got burnt umber, which is a really nice dark brown. It also speeds up the drying of a lot of colors. And it's going to make a really nice dark when mixed with the ultramarine blue. And then a color I never hardly use is a ochre here, but this is called Gold Ochre by Gamblin. And it is actually a transparent ochre. Most ochres are very opaque, meaning they cover completely. So it's a nice color, mixes well. It makes really nice kind of olivey greens, which is what I'm kind of after today. I'm going to be using a lot of sage colors and olive greens. I'm not even picking up my actual photo reference of this scene because I don't care what the original colors were. I'm not going to be looking at it, but I do want to grab one reference really quick. Perfect. All right, let's get mixing here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be working on this just like I would in normal painting, as if almost I were starting from scratch. I've got my nice design in, I've got my values somewhat established, and even a hint of what way the glow is going to be. I'm going to be hiding my sun kind of back in here, so it's really backlit and kind of glowing through here, which means a lot of these bushes and grasses will be kind of getting top lit, and then the light's going to be breaking through back here. So it's behind here and it's going to be shining along, illuminating the ground across this little pond or lake here. And then the sides of these trees are going to be picking up the light. So this area will be backlit. This area will be more side and backlit. The sky color, that's going to be the big mystery, is what we end up doing there. But anyways, I typically, when I come back into a painting like this and I'm going to start adding colors, I will do just like I would in any other painting. I like to work from dark to light. So I'm going to mix up a dark using my burnt umber and ultramarine blue. Yeah, just a beautiful, super dark. I can, by adding a little more ultramarine down below here, I can make it a bluer dark, which would be nice in the deeper shadows. And I can let it get warmer by adding more of the burnt umber, or I could even introduce a little bit of my brown pink, which is a very transparent, very reddish, warm brown. So now I know that I've got within this pile of very dark paint, it goes from cooler to warmer, from bluer to redder. So when I come back in and reintroduce the shadows to give myself form and structure back into this, I will have that to play with. A lot of times I do like to pre-mix my colors because it helps me to just kind of understand what I'm going to do. It's going to be a lot of greens, like I was talking about, a lot of earthy greens. So instead of mixing with, let's just show you here. So that's my yellow ochre mixed with my manganese blue. Let's see if I mixed the manganese blue with my bright yellow, my lemon yellow. You can see what kind of a difference of greens, right? So that's a beautiful and very, very vibrant green, but not what I want for this painting. That would be perfect for kind of a spring scene, or maybe, you know, midday sun. I'll just pull that down here and we'll reuse it here in a little bit. But I want more of earthy, olivey, dirty greens. I think are just gonna read better. So add a little ultramarine blue, and look how dark and really olivey it gets really quick. So the yellow ochre, the ochre colors for me are definitely a shortcut. Ochre is a really easy color to mix, so I don't often buy it or add it to my palette, but it does make a really nice shortcut to mixing more naturalistic greens. All right, let's bring this one back up because we can probably use it in our light area. So mixing some Indian yellow with it, which has the yellow that leans towards orange. So you can see all of a sudden it gets very much, not nearly a pure green anymore. You can even add a touch of red to that. All right, that little bit of red was super strong, so I went flying past the color I want. And we'll have to introduce a little more, and we'll see if I can get it back. Otherwise, I'll have to start a new pile, which is not a problem. This is a beautiful color too, and I'm sure I'll be able to use that maybe up in the trees and stuff like that. This will be a really nice warm. I'll put that down here. I'll have my shrubs, my trees, my darks, and I'll start mixing some sky colors down here. So again, get back to the light area of some of these shrubs. So we'll mix both my blues together, my lemon yellow. I'm going to grab a little bit of that ochre color to mix in to get it a little more earthy. And what do I want? I'm going to add a little more Indian yellow just to continue to warm it up. There we go. So I want it to be related to this green, which is going to be the more shadowy or mid values of the bushes. And this will be the brighter areas of the bushes. So I want them to relate to each other, but have a cool or a darker and a warm or a lighter version of it. And I'm going to even make one more batch of a dark green. So sometimes watching, just people do pre-mixing can be a little bit boring, but I think it's so important and it's so instructive, and it will really help now that I've got the values, I've got the design, I've got the structure established. By pre-mixing my colors, making sure that they play nicely together up here on the palette is really going to help when I come across, I hope. Should make it a lot quicker. Look for another tree color here. Well, and the darker areas within the trees. So these trees are quite transparent. The leaves let a lot of light through. So even in the dark areas within the tree, it's still going to be, it's not going to be as dark as this, as in the ground plane, because some light is absolutely making it through the leaves, the transparent leaves and everything else. There we go. So I got my dark and my light, and I can even mix an ultra light for along the periphery of those leaves using both my yellows and some white. get some real nice glow, maybe a touch of red, warm that up even more, a little more orangey. There we go. That's nice. So this is kind of my tree colors, my bush colors, my shadow colors. And of course, I'll be mixing up more colors as I go along. But if I do like to have some of my base colors established, let's look to the sky. So I'm thinking that it's going to be kind of grayed down a little bit towards the warm area here. So by having grays, these or gray cools, this will feel all even warmer. I'm not going to let it be too dark because the sun's already risen. Mixing some of the alizarin in there. Very dark, so we definitely need some white to start reading our colors here. Still quite blue. Kind of nice though. Gonna add a little more of the ultramarine, the alizarin crimson, get it a little more purpley, and then I can actually add, we'll use that as my outside color. And then as I come down and get towards the light a little more, it's going to get a little redder. Go through a lot of paper towels, trying to keep good, clean colors here. So it's the same color with a little more alizarin added to it and a bit of white. Nice. These could both be quite dark, so I'm going to go ahead and lighten that up even more. I like my skies to be, even if it's grays and cools, I'll often have the value, the light and darks of it, pretty light. All right, let's lighten that up and our next touch here. And more alizarin here. Beautiful pinks. Alizarin's a great color. It's just I don't use it very often because I find that quinacridone red can do pretty much most of what alizarin can do, and alizarin can never be as bright or as vibrant as quinacridone red. So that's why I choose quinacridone over alizarin typically, but alizarin is a great color. Take that pink, add some yellow. There we go. And then where the sky is going to be ultimately quite warm, quite light, where the sun is rising. Use that amazing Indian yellow, a touch of lemon yellow. Look how hot that is. Yeah. Preserve some of that and then lighten most of it. All right, so we've kind of got most of our big shapes here. We've kind of got colors for them, so that's great, and it allows me to progress a lot faster. And so I want to step back really quick and just kind of give this a quick view and just go, you know what, do these colors play nicely together? Do they, do what I want them to do? This color is a little bit out of place here compared to, I think there's a nice harmony in most of it. I'm wondering if I need to kind of green these down just a touch. So it's not so the trees aren't so separate of everything else. So I'm just going to bring a touch of manganese. Into some of it and just see what that does. So I'm leaving a little bit of that pile from before, and then within each one of those piles, I'm adding a little bit of manganese, which is a greenish blue. This one up here, and we'll see if that doesn't help tie it into the bushes. So maybe it's not fall so much as kind of a pre-fall, late summer or something like that. All right, we should probably get going to the part you guys all showed up here, start painting. So again, I'm going to work from my darks to my lights. So I'll be laying in my shadow structures really quickly to kind of give and establish the form, kind of giving it the foundation, as it were, if I were using a house metaphor. And I'm just going to picking a couple brushes that I think are going to be the most useful. I'm going to use a little tiny cheap shop brush here for quite a bit of it. And I'll actually even use a really beat up old shop brush here in just a little bit as well. So let's get into those shadows. I'm going to start with the darkest shadows. And that's going to be kind of where the plants kind of roll underneath and none of this light that's coming back from behind is getting to. Kind of along the water's edge here. I like to keep my darks quite thin. I don't want to put them on really thick usually, because then when they dry, they can become very reflective and very shiny, making it impossible to photograph. And they kind of ruin the illusion of how the scene is meant to be viewed. Because if it's really reflective, then the darks actually appear really light. So it's important that my darks, most of the time, stay thin, and then they'll dry without as much oil in them and dry a little bit more on the matte side. As I'm kind of getting up and around here, I'm going to start to warm it up. So I started off with really cool shadows down below. That's where they're the deepest, darkest shadows that almost no light is getting into. And then as I get up further or closer to the sun, coming through these trees, I can start to introduce slightly warmer shadows if I want. All right. I'm also going to go ahead and establish some of my shadows on these trees back here. But what I'm going to do, because I don't want it as dark, there's a lot of atmosphere between us and this area back here. So I'm going to bring in a little bit of the cool blue that's going to be in the sky, just to lighten up some of those shadow colors. And that hopefully will make it appear like these shadows are further back in space here. Love trying to create the illusion of atmosphere and depth. And I can usually do that by altering my values and my paint color temperature a little bit. Oftentimes things get bluer and grayer looking as they recede into space. Still just using my big cheap shop brush because I'm just kind of blocking in some big areas of color. The detail usually doesn't come too much from my shadows. It comes as I'm putting colors on top of and around the shadows and kind of carve out my detail. And I also am always kind of chasing the idea of not really having too much detail, but rather having the idea of implied detail, which I have a lot of fun with. I bring in some of these shadows that are in the trees up above. They're not nearly as dark as down here in the ground plane, but I do want them to relate. So I introduced a little bit of my shadow color into over here to create my darkest areas in these trees. I am going to use kind of a broken brush stroke, meaning I'm going to let a lot of that kind of back color show through those warm auburns and golds that I've got in that underpainting. I hope will show through by not using really dense paint, especially in the shadows here. When I let some of that warmth kind of play through. Back to the shrubbery down here. Let's get some dark mids. So it's not quite as black as it was. A little lighter than that, but still quite dark. In fact, on the screen, it may be reading still as really dark. And so I'm just kind of bringing that over the top, right along the tops of those shadows. Go ahead and jump to the next color. A little lighter, a little bit warmer. All right, now we're going to hopefully start to see kind of as the light's creeping across, maybe not hitting these ones down here directly, but they're still being illuminated by the sky, by the, not from the light sun itself, but from the reflected light in the sky as it's coming down, bouncing off the dome of our atmosphere. So it's not going to be as bright as some of them, but you still can see the form and the underlying structure kind of these grasses growing right along the side of the pond or creek or stream or lake or whatever this is here. My shadows, my reflections. So this is the line of the water here. And so everything down below is reflections. And I'm generally just don't let them quite get as bright as the brightest colors. And I generally don't let them get as dark as the darkest color. So a lot of times with my reflections, they just kind of get a little more mid or a little more grayed down or a little more towards the neutral compared to the thing that they are actually reflecting. All right, let's get some light on some of these bushes and see what that looks like here. So again, I know that my sun is kind of coming from behind these trees and it's going to be illuminating some of these bushes, catching some of their leaves, backlit. Might be too, add a little more orange to that. It's a little too green, a little too, I want it a little more earthy than that. So I'm just kind of trying to think a little bit three-dimensionally as, what areas would actually be catching that light, what areas are in the shadows of other areas that are, and so who's getting direct light, who's getting diffuse light, who's getting bouncing light. This kind of messy bushes right along the side of the bank here. Grasses that are kind of growing out into the area a little bit more. And I'll come back in probably and add a little more light into some of these bushes and stuff here, just a little bit. All right, that same light is hitting these guys back here, but it's again a little further back. So add a little bit of atmosphere, a little more, won't be quite as vibrant back there. And I will come through with littler paintbrushes and stuff as soon as I kind of get this nice and covered to start to, give it better detail, a little more control in my shape making and stuff. But right now, again, I'm just trying to kind of get it covered and get things established so I can begin to judge whether or not my colors, my temperatures, my values, all those things are working in conjunction and the image is actually reading in the way that I hope that it is. Right. Gonna paint that band of light coming through because that's going to be pretty important element here. I'm just creating kind of a nice warm light color, and the light's shooting through from behind here and in front of these trees back here. That reading okay for you guys there on the Zoom?
Yep.
All right, so that's meant to be the bank far across on the other side of the pond here. Great. All right. Already getting up into the trees, but I think because I want these trees to be kind of spindly and not so heavy, I think I'm going to be better served if I go ahead and start bringing in some of the sky color so I can establish that. And I like to go from dark to light, just like I did here, reestablishing my shadows. And then I like to go thin to thick, so keeping the paint thinner, and I'll get thicker and thicker as I keep applying it, especially as I get into the light areas. I like my lights to be usually kind of the thickest paint on my surface. So light to dark, thin to thick, and then big to small. So I'm looking at big shapes. And of course, I've got my biggest shape here is the sky. So I should, absolutely not be ignoring that probably as long as I have. So let's go ahead and get some of that sky in there. And what that'll do is kind of help tell us a little more about what's happening because the sky is the source of the light. So it'll help us to figure out what colors and everything else we might want to start incorporating into this. I'm gonna go ahead and wipe back a little bit. I've kind of lost a little bit of my shape, it looks like. So I want to make sure I pick up probably a clean brush unless I want to take the time to clean it really well. But usually when I do demos, I don't spend too much time cleaning. I'll just have a pile of messy brushes at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and grab these 3 brushes here. Let's separate them from my dirty green brushes from all the shrubbery. I'm going to bring in some of this blue gray here, and I'm going to put that in this corner. Again, my sun is going to be in here. So this is kind of the furthest away point that I'm showing in my painting from the sun. So I'll bring in kind of a blue gray. It's nice. Now it's going to go towards a slightly warmer purple as it begins to shift towards the pinks, and then eventually the oranges, and then eventually the bright yellow of the sun setting behind those trees. I hope. I finish all my sentences with I hope, because it is painting. It can always surprise you. I'm just kind of creating my transition from those blues to the purples to the more pinks, letting some of those pinks come back up into the blues and purples to create hopefully, nice soft cloud type shapes. Something, so there's a little bit of movement, even if it's really quite subtle up here in the sky. So it's not just a big, boring, flat area. And getting towards kind of a cooler light, because I'm going to get a warmer light over here. So this is almost just kind of a cream color, kind of that just a little bit yellowish white. And then that is going to get quite a bit warmer as we get towards our sun. Again, sun is kind of playing peekaboo back here behind the trees. Kind of obliterating all my detail in there. I kind of washed out a bunch of the trunks and branches, but hopefully that'll be okay. This yellow got a little bit bright, a little bit too yellowy, too fast. Let's see if I can just wipe it back just a touch, as opposed to trying to continue to cover it and calm it down. I'll just kind of pull up some of that really yellow paint and replace it with a little more, again, back to the kind of cream color. This brush is in really bad shape. Look at that, just exploded all over the place. So we'll see if I can use a little bit of it for creating very organic, very soft, out of control brush strokes. Sometimes that's kind of fun. Then I can come back in and use that, some of that. I'll retain some of it and I'll paint back into most of it. I like these big clunky brush. I mean, this one's in really bad shape. This is the worst I've ever had. But I do like that they just kind of force organic messiness that, you know, you can kind of get lost in our painting sometimes. So a little more, a little more.
Michael, this is Bella. So don't those brushes drop hairs all over your painting?
They sure do.
Okay.
Yeah, constantly on the lookout for hairs. A lot of times you can kind of, you know, come back in with a tweezers or whatever, or I can just kind of poke at it with my brush and they'll usually pick up their remnants. But yeah, that definitely bad brushes have, you know, they're fun, but they definitely have their pitfalls as well. And you know, dropping hairs everywhere is a big part of it. I used to share my studio with a golden retriever and a big fluffy tuxedo cat, so I kind of got used to having hair in all my paintings. But yeah, it can be pretty annoying. Yeah, there's a hair right there. All right. So then I just kind of grab it with my brush generally and just wipe that off, pull it off with a paper towel. Now that you said that, Bella, I'm seeing hairs everywhere. Before they were just birds off in the distance. All right, getting it covered pretty quickly, which is nice because then I can really start to kind of come through and look for the detail and begin to kind of use some of this paint to carve out what I want. So with a smaller brush here, I'm going to go ahead and clean this one because I used it on that bank back there. I'm going to start introducing some of these warm colors that are catching these lights as they come through. So we've got this nice little glowy leaves. I'm also going to be picking it up on this bush over here. It's kind of taller bush. Take that same nice warm light. Let's bring it down across. Bringing it over the ridge, it's going to even reveal the form of these bushes a little more, hopefully. I don't want it to all be the same. So, you know, I've got some more yellow, I've got some more orange, I've got some more orangey colors that I can use to help convey what it is that I'm trying to do with the light and the warmth coming through these trees. This tree's gonna come down in front of this bush, so I'm gonna have to figure out how to make it look like this whole tree is in front here, coming closer to us. So I'll have to figure that out. Good fun challenge. Just cleaning a smaller brush so I can start to push some of this paint that's up here kind of down, and I can use some of these colors to kind of carve in a little closer where I want a little bit sharper of an edge, or to cover a little more of the trees or bushes, whichever thing it is. And here, let's I'm just kind of removing a little bit of paint. Feel like my shadows got a little intense there, so just taking off a little bit of that. Let's get back to our nice, happy, bright trees up here. All right, I apologize to not responding to the comments. Can't really read them very well while I'm painting. I don't have a my lovely assistant, my daughter or wife here with me today, so I'm afraid I will have to respond to anything written afterwards. So. Again, these trees are all backlit, so it's kind of always a fun, interesting challenge when they're, they're thin enough, like they're not blocking all the light, they're letting a lot of the light through with their transparent leaves and semi-transparent leaves and everything else. So it's a fun and interesting challenge to try to create that illusion of light coming through, but definitely being obstructed. It's not strong light. Nice, have to trust that I'll be able to come back in and put these tree trunks back in a meaningful fashion, but I don't want to be trying to paint around them constantly because they are really thin. These are kind of a poplar or something like that, a very thin tree, fast growing. And so I don't need to worry about, painting around the trunks too much. There's nothing worse than just trying to paint around your detail kind of early in the painting. And introduce a little more kind of a cool blue into some of these shadows a little bit where the light's bouncing. So this would be like the reflected light or the bounced light, which is on the cooler side. Just so we don't have such big, dark masses. Right there. So let's I'm gonna take just a step back so I can kind of judge what's happening because I'm right on top of the painting, right, right so close to it. It's hard for me to actually see or judge what's going on sometimes. So it's good for me to step back a couple steps. Oops, I have the whole tree here to cover, the whole reflection. It's always a bummer when you think you're cruising along and you realize you forgot the whole reflection, which strangely happens more than you would think. Get so caught up in whatever area it is. So it's kind of good and advised by most artists to kind of work the whole surface and look around. That's one of the reasons. Mostly they say that so that you can judge your values and colors and everything against the whole surface versus just in a little area. All right, cruising along.
It's really starting to glow.
Yeah, it's beginning, isn't it? It's starting to bring in a little more red for some warmth and just see what that does here. Let's sparkle some of that in there. Sprinkle, sparkle. I mean, hard to talk and paint. You'd think I'd be better at it by now. Yesterday in class, I just kept starting sentences and not finishing them. So deep in thought. Yeah, I'm kind of liking introducing some of that red down into here. A little warm red, just to again, even add more to the warmth, more to the getting a little too spotty there, so I'll come back in and I've got just a whole bunch of little dots there you don't want, probably distracting. And but it's really important deciding where your light source is and kind of sticking to it so that you can let everybody else kind of live in that same world. All the bushes, all the plants all need to be being affected by, or appear to be affected by, the same light source. Again, because when you're outdoors, it's just a single light source as a general rule, the sky, the sun. And so if you have multiple shadows being cast and multiple things like that, it becomes really odd looking. A lot of times the viewer will be like, something's wrong. I don't know what it is, but something's not right in this painting. Just know in their gut that it just doesn't quite feel right. That I was going to step back and I still haven't done it. Just keep seeing areas that need my attention that I can see right up close. And that will help me when I do step back, hopefully, to not have to, not have as many obvious changes that need to be made. We will see. All right, yeah, got it covered. I mean, I think every square inch of this surface has now been recovered, covered again. And it will be interesting to now kind of come in and shape that and find the detail within that. So give me 1 minute as I step back and kind of observe the painting from a little bigger distance. And somebody else asking about getting hairs in my paintings, and yes, indeed, I definitely get hairs in my paintings with these big silly brushes that I'm using here. It's a trade-off. So just kind of obliterate some of those dots there where it got too spotty. And go ahead and pick up again a smaller brush and start to look for my form. Maybe first I will do a quick drag across the bottom of this painting here and kind of give myself a little better illusion and feeling of reflection. So I'm just taking a big brush here that I had used earlier. So there's a little bit of paint thinner, so I was just drying that off. I'm just going to take my reflections and brush it very soft. Just kind of dragging my brush strokes down and then dragging a couple brush strokes across. You can oftentimes kind of get the feeling of water with a little bit of ripples in it. There we go, hopefully. kind of interesting because I've visited this location a number of times. I painted it a number of times, but right now it's almost out of my head, kind of based on memory, kind of based on, like, I don't actually have any photo that I'm looking at or anything. So I did that underpainting with a photo so I could get the values, the design, and the structure. But now I'm doing it without one to figure out so I can just kind of be free with the colors and kind of experimental, or yeah, just kind of try new things, be fun with it. Create kind of the idea of like a little more of a bank down here, like something maybe you could walk along. There we go. So that kind of gives us a grounding, almost like a place that if you got across this water, you could go hang out, maybe throw a fishing line in the water. And this area is kind of getting a little busy. I'm wondering if I don't even want to just kind of maybe simplify in here just a touch. Maybe make it a bigger bush. I'm trying to figure out how that would look. Maybe just by getting rid of some of those highlights a little bit. Just kind of this time it's really important that if I'm changing from the bushes to the sky or wherever else, that I really am cautious or aware, sorry, and make sure I'm either using a clean brush or a new brush so I don't get too much pollution, cross pollution going on from the ground colors to my sky colors to my whatever it is, whatever area it is I'm working into. See if we can kind of give these a little more shape back here simply by coming in and introducing a little bit more shadow structure into maybe some of these trees back here. I want them to be, feel like they're falling back into space, but at the same time, I don't want them to just be big soft blobs. Just putting some bushes along the edge of those trees back there, hopefully. I'm probably going to come back in here in just a little bit with some Q-tips actually and remove some of the paint, and so I reveal the colors underneath the underpainting, because there was some really nice little warms in there that I think might really look nice peeking through a little bit in some of the shadow areas. And I can just kind of keep adding in some really warm, glowy leaves kind of over the tops of some of these lights back here to really make it look like the lights really coming through and catching some of their periphery leaves, the leaves along the edge of the bush and trees. All right, I think we need some trunks to be kind of a little more strongly established, and that will help us to, we gotta kind of go to the middle of the tree generally, and it'll kind of be below that. And get a little bit darker with them, but I definitely, because they're being wrapped by that sun as it's rising in the morning, you're gonna be quite warm. So adding quite a bit of red to that. And just a touch of paint thinner. For the first time adding paint thinner to any of these paints. And that's just going to make them a little slicker as I take this little brush and kind of drag it across this very wet paint that I have on here. I'm just going to very lightly touch and just kind of drag those colors up. Reload. One over here by the edge. I'm gonna let that get a little warmer, a little more transparent, and I'm gonna put like there's some littler trees kind of growing in there as well. Gotta make sure my spacing doesn't get too regular. One more right in here, just to go. It look like the lights coming back behind there a little bit between those trunks. I can also use some of this sky color to start putting in a couple sky holes in this tree so it's not so dense. I want a little bit of light coming through. Just kind of mixing up some different sky colors here. I can grab those and let's put some sky holes. They're always fun. Always make the shapes a little more interesting. It's kind of a nice, fun way to kind of carve out things. My sky holes are generally a little darker than the sky itself. Because not quite as much light is getting through little nice sky holes. All right, well, that has been the hour. I'll paint just a little bit more here, but please let me know if you have any questions or what you think here. If that made sense, kind of how I went about applying the paint opaquely over the underpainting here. And like I said, I'm going to come back and I'm going to reveal some of that warmth just using some Q-tips so that I kind of covered a lot of the background. And I really like that auburn warm color that I have under there. So see if I can reveal some of it a little more.
Michael, I have a question. It's gorgeous. On the trees,
Yep.
the big tall trees, and maybe I'm thinking perspective, maybe I'm not understanding the perspective of, I see like one tree coming down in the reflection, but I don't see the others. Is it because they're receding and they're too far away, or?
Oh, I do need to put those trunks in, you're right, too, as well, so, no, I was thinking that because it's kind of going up, so this line would represent this line, that, you know, there might not be, it might not be showing as much, but I think you're right, I think it
Would there
nice-
would there be more bank there then, or
What was the question? More
would there then be more bank in the reflection, or that's one thing that always confuses me is
Yeah,
the,
so it's standing above a little bit, so the reflection kind of does get a little bit smaller. If you're standing right at the water level, you know, if the water was at eye level, horizon wise, it can change. So yeah, I can definitely bring in more, but I did want to have a little glimpse of that light. Like I felt like that was pretty important to me to kind of help tell the story. So yeah, it's always a little bit of a, you know, you got a little bit of creative liberty maybe on my part. And again, I maybe should be looking at a photo as opposed to just kind of making it up. But it's sure fun to make it up. And I just don't like this shape right here. This line is super regular and kind of boring. So maybe I will come in, I'm going to squint my eyes and look, what could I carve in and make it a little more interesting. Yeah, but that was a good observation, Michelle. And it's important that I kind of step back and kind of will see some of that a little better. That's probably my worst habit when I'm doing demos is I just want to stay. I want to keep moving. I don't want you guys to be bored ever as I step back and, you know, look at things and dead air. Did that help, Michelle, having a little bit more?
yeah, definitely.
Cool, because that was easy. Nice when it's an easy fix. So good catch. Good observation. Yeah, and I can just keep, you know, carving in and making these trees a little less solid, you know, by just kind of coming in and pruning with my sky holes. I can just kind of keep doing that all day. Can definitely get myself in trouble. Now you don't want to over prune your trees, they will look sickly and dead. Yeah, I think I'm going to about leave it there so that I can kind of take a little break. And then what I'll do is I will often, you know, as getting a little break, getting away from it for a couple of minutes, go get some coffee, go pet the cat, whatever it is I need to do. Will give me a chance to kind of look back at it and evaluate it a little bit better and see it a little more clearly. Get some red back here. But you can see I'll say that I'm going to stop painting, and then actually stopping painting is a whole nother thing for me because I just have so much fun. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed a little extra bonus class here, and yeah, sorry we're so busy yesterday. We had class just goes so fast. It's amazing. 3 hours of talking and painting, and I still don't get to everything I want. Maybe the next one I'll do, if I do another little bonus class, we'll be doing tree shapes over gold gesso, which is always fun. Just to kind of show that I get a lot of questions about the gold gesso. So let me know if that's something you'd be interested in seeing in the future here. And otherwise, I'll see you guys next week. Any last questions at all? Or comments or observations?
Thank you for doing this today.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I'd be really into the gold gesso thing.
Okay, cool. I will
Gesso.
plan on doing that. Yeah, there's examples on our Padlet page of some paintings I've done with the gold gesso. I showed them kind of in class yesterday. So anyways, and I'll post some on the Facebook as well, so you guys can decide if that's something you want to see. Anyways, fun. I probably will come back in and not have such a foggy background edge back here, kind of sharpen that up a little bit. A couple other changes. And we will see how it feels. Oh, see, didn't clean my brush. That's the problem with having 20 dirty brushes down here. Some of them look clean. Nice thing about having piles of your color from before still. You just kind of tap back into them. Very cool. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me this morning. That was fun. Pretty productive. Got a lot of surface covered. Not sure how it'll end up after I revisit it, but the main thing for me in the beginning is to get it covered so that I can begin to read and read the values, read the colors, and see how they're playing together and what changes I need to make at that point. So it's just important for me oftentimes just to kind of get the big areas covered. Awesome. Thanks again.
Thank you, Michael.
See you next week.
Yes,
See you
thank you,
next-
Michael.
Really helpful. Learned a lot.
Awesome. And I'll have it posted here soon.
Thank you.
Guys, thanks for spending another hour. That's a lot of hours we spent together this week, especially if you were at the demo on Monday. That's got to be too much, Mike, at this point. So
Have a
All right.
great week.
Bye.
awesome. Take care, everybody.
Bye.